So I have 3 stories that dropped this week that prove Canada doesn't need the United States anymore. A $10,000 fine for faking Canadian products. If you ask me, I think that $10,000 should be a lot more. A brand new trade deal with Mexico. And European leaders literally thanking Canada for standing up to the US. I think it's safe to say it's not a boycott anymore, this is a breakup. Now, these aren't just like 3 random reports that I'm just deciding to show to you. They all interconnect together, because they all have one commonality: moving away from the dependence on the United States. Now, I know my channel viewers are probably about 60% Canadian, but the international viewers that are checking into my channel is growing at a significant pace. So what I show you in this video can also apply to your country as well. So let's get into the first report out of CBC.
Brenda Nichols has been committed to the Buy Canadian movement, spurred by Donald Trump's tariffs. So she's happy to see the Canadian Food Inspection Agency finally start to dole out fines to grocers that mislabel imported food as Canadian.
They should have done it from the very first, and then maybe now we wouldn't be having these continual problems almost a year later.
Last year, CBC News uncovered more than a dozen cases of so-called maple washing, like raw almonds branded as made in Canada.
We don't grow almonds in this country.
At the time, the CFIA issued no fines, but now the agency is cracking down.
Now, I'm glad they're finally starting to crack down. I mean, it's about time. And for the past 10 months, I've been advocating on my channel to report any maple washing to the CFIA. Personally, I reported 2 last year, mainly from the Real Canadian Superstore on Granby Street in Vancouver. Now, I haven't done any since because, well, the obvious, it's kind of hard for me to do it now. But if I was back in Vancouver, I would be checking every single label on every single product that I'm buying. Why? Because right now, we know it's under the microscope. And finally, after a whole freaking year, the CFIA is finally starting to do something about it. But the amount that they're fining, it's going to make you go, what the hell, man?
Hitting 2 Loblaw-owned grocery stores in Toronto, each with a $10,000 fine. A Fortino's, which displayed French-made cheese spread with a maple leaf symbol, and a Superstore, which displayed American-made broccoli slaw with a maple leaf and a Product of Canada declaration.
I think that CFIA is handing out fines now because it's still front of mind. People like you are asking questions. Consumers are bringing it up. So it's in the news.
Okay, that was what I was trying to say earlier. It's in the spotlight right now. But I think what we can do right now to keep building on this momentum, if you are shopping at, say, Superstore or Save-On or Loblaws, Safeway, anything else, and you see something, report it as soon as you can. Because if the CFIA only sees maybe 2 or 3 reports coming in, it'll start to die down. But if they see hundreds or thousands, that's when they're going to really have to take it seriously. And if for whatever reason you're lacking motivation to actually report it, just remember this guy.
CBC News has also learned the CFIA is investigating Sobeys head office for similar mislabeling problems in store. Welcome news for this Sobeys shopper.
I think it's really important, particularly for grocery stores, not to be misleading.
Sobeys and Loblaw told CBC News they strive for accurate country of origin labeling, but when dealing with mass inventory, mistakes can happen. Still, many shoppers feel they should pay a higher price for those mistakes.
What do you think about a $10,000 fine for a big company like Loblaw?
I think it should be $100,000. $10,000 is not very much for a multi-million-dollar company.
Actually, it's more like billions, because Todd Maffin did a video on this, and he mentioned for the duration of his video that he created, Loblaws would have been able to pay off that $10,000 fine. So that fine amount, if you ask me, is insulting to every Canadian that's trying to make a difference.
CFIA fines max out at $15,000. However, Ottawa is reviewing that limit to ensure that companies don't treat fines as simply the cost of doing business. Sophia Harris, CBC News, Vancouver.
So what do we need to do to put more pressure on this? I guess from the consumer side, we can follow as many reports as we see. But when it comes to the fines, obviously the government is going to have to do something about that. Do we have to start a petition? Or is there already a petition? I don't know. But personally, I want to see this gain momentum. And if you want more information on this, Todd did a way better video and summary than I could. I will leave a link to his video in the description below. Now, if you do have an incident at your local grocer that you do want to report, I'm going to show Todd's link again, and it's basically a shortened link to directly go to the CFIA website. And the URL is b.link/maplewashing, which is pretty easy enough to remember. And once you're on the page, you just fill in your details, plus the details of the product, the store, when you bought it, and click submit. It shouldn't take you more than 5-10 minutes to do. So I'll leave a link to Todd's video in the description, as well as a link to the shortened URL to go to the CFIA website. And Todd, if you're watching this, it was great seeing you in our Discord server. It was almost like we had a local Canadian celebrity in our Discord server chatting with us. But we should definitely jump on a call soon, so let me know when you're ready. Now before I jump into the next topic, I would like to give a shout out to Danish Prime from our Discord server, who posted this photo in the server from White's Lake in Nova Scotia. There's definitely no shortage of photos being sent to me, whether it's on Blue Sky or Hey Cafe or email or even Discord. So I appreciate you posting this Danish Prime and helping to share our country with the rest of the viewers. Now I want to move on to the next topic, which is potatoes. More specifically, Prince Edward Island potatoes. And we're about to have them exported to Mexico, which hasn't happened in a while. Let's take a look.
Canadian and PEI farmers could be shipping potatoes to Mexico as soon as this fall. The Canadian Food and Inspection Agency reached a deal to export them for eating and processing. For the PEI potato industry, it's great news.
We had something to offer the Mexican consumers and the Mexican retailers that they did not have. We had russet potatoes here in this part of the country, and that's what predominantly would be going there. So it offers the consumer a different choice, and they do not grow russets there, so it's non-competitive.
Now, this might not sound like a big deal to many people, but you have to understand what it kind of means. Canada used to send most of everything to or through the US. Now we're literally shipping around them. We're now in an age where all of our industries and sectors and products are looking for new trade partners. I chose to show this report mainly because most people wouldn't think about potatoes. When you hear trade, you think like steel, lumber, oil, everything, all the big stuff. But as more products start to get more trading partners, I'm really curious to see what like 3, 4, or 5 years down the road is going to look like. Because let's say, for example, like 3, 4 years down the road, the orange guy's gone and we have a Democratic president. I'm pretty sure the rest of the world is still going to be very, very cautious when it comes to the United States.
Keenan was part of a team that went to Mexico last year to get support from possible customers. He says there was lots of interest. There's still some logistics to sort out, like shipping, but he says he could possibly send several containers a week or month by water.
We need to spread our markets out to where those potatoes are needed most.
The PEI Potato Board says this is big news. The island already ships potatoes to about 20 countries, but Mexico's large population makes it pretty appealing. The board says it isn't about sidelining any U.S. business, but opening new doors.
I think partially it's part of CUSMA, and anything that we can ship to where we can have tariff-free entry is of the utmost importance for our exporters here. We're also at a time where Canadian potatoes have been requested by the Mexican people.
Canada hasn't exported potatoes to Mexico in years, but Mexico does bring in potatoes from the U.S.
Now let me ask you this question. Will Mexico continue to bring in potatoes from the US? To me, it sounds like everyone's preparing for the CUSMA deal to die. And rightfully so, we should be protecting ourselves. But one thing I do know is that with all these deals happening without the United States being involved, years and years are going to go down the road, and the United States probably will end up asking, hey, do you guys want to do a deal with us? And I think a lot of countries are going to say, nah, I'm good.
All we asked as Canadians is to have the same access as the U.S. has, with one caveat, and that is ensuring that we had access to the seaway. I think that's extremely important. Every country right now, we've been working extremely hard to diversify our markets. I think it's extremely important, and this is really going to benefit Canadian producers.
McDonald says there's a lot of work to do before potatoes start moving to Mexico. He hopes that could happen as early as this fall.
Now, hopefully in the fall, I'll be able to report to everybody that, hey, potatoes are now being shipped to Mexico. But it's just one small piece of the giant puzzle when it comes to moving away from the United States. And speaking of moving away from the United States, our government, along with pretty much almost the rest of the world, is starting to give the United States the cold shoulder. I'm really glad that no other countries helped to step in when the orange guy was begging for help to protect the Strait of Hormuz. But I do want to report what our Prime Minister, Mark Carney, is doing as he met with the Nordic leaders. And when the European leaders are publicly thanking Mark Carney, you know we're doing something right. Let's take a look at the report.
Between the crosses of the Nordic flags, a maple leaf, as 5 Nordic leaders and Prime Minister Mark Carney convened in Oslo to discuss trade, security, and Arctic sovereignty.
We are united by our shared values.
This following U.S. President Donald Trump's threats to take over Greenland. Carney was asked pointedly by Danish media whether Canada would send troops to defend the Arctic island if needed.
We stand foursquare behind the principles of sovereignty, territorial integrity, being absolutely clear about that, being clear that we will back that with measures as necessary.
Canada has not yet sent any troops, but Denmark has bolstered its military presence in the quasi-independent territory, and other allies have sent troops through a military exercise.
Now, I've said this in my videos before, and this is just my opinion, but I absolutely believe that we should be sending troops to stand alongside the rest of the European troops that are there, and to really show that Canada will be there if push comes to shove. Because if a situation were to happen where the United States were to invade Canada, I'm sure we would want our allies to be there with us as well.
One of the reasons why we have been able to stand firmly on very common values, that you have to respect sovereign states, that you have to respect a people's right for self-determination, is because of our good friends.
Denmark's Prime Minister even singled out Carney by name.
Especially you, Mark. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you for that.
Trump has largely backed off his threat to take over Greenland, which has pushed the Nordic bloc closer to Canada, another target of the U.S. president.
And I'd like to also to say that this is responding to threats which are unacceptable in general, but even more unacceptable among allies.
Now, here's my thing, is like, can we even call the United States an ally anymore? Because an ally is someone that is grateful, someone that you can trust, and someone that you can depend on as well if shit hits the fan. But the problem is that shit's hitting the fan because of this country. I never thought in my lifetime that I would see a poll that many Canadians trust China more than the United States. But one thing I've been noticing on social media, is mainly from the MAGA haters, is that they're saying that NATO is dead. But why is it dead only because the United States is gone? To me, it seems like another center of the world statement. Like, NATO can't live without the United States. Now, this is totally out of my realm, and I don't know what would happen if the United States left NATO. But what I'm trying to say is that all the countries within NATO, aside from the United States, can still build a partnership together. The world is not going to fall apart if the United States is not involved.
And Iceland's leader points out the annexation crisis is sharpening countries' commitments to Arctic sovereignty and a refocus from NATO, calling attention to northern security.
We've been worried about Greenland. We're obviously worried in general about the situation in Europe when it comes to Ukraine, but we're not afraid.
Carney is now here in London, where he'll sit down next with UK Prime Minister to once again discuss security and defence. Then, an audience with King Charles. Catherine Tunney, CBC News, London.
So Prime Minister Mark Carney continues to travel the world, meeting world leaders and strengthening and building new alliances. Meanwhile, this guy is meeting this guy. You tell me which one is more productive. But I specifically wanted to show everybody this report, to show that our Canadian government is starting to make changes. But not only that, I really wanted to show the compliments that Prime Minister Mark Carney was getting, because it is a direct reflection of the Canadian citizens as well. If you think our boycott efforts and elbows up mentality is not being seen around the world, well, you're wrong. You just have to look at my comments. Many citizens from around the world have been complimenting Canada on our efforts to basically tell the US to fuck off. So I am happy what's going on right now when it comes to decoupling from the United States. It's going to take some time. I mean, what's that quote? Rome wasn't built in a day or something like that, right? But I am very curious to see what the world looks like once the orange guy's term is over. I'm not trying to be anti-American in this video. This is actually a pro-Canadian one. And it's a bit of a difference, because Canada isn't trying to punish the US. We're just moving on. And in fact, the US is actually punishing themselves. I know it might be hard for a lot of US citizens to hear that, but unfortunately it is the truth. If you found any value or agree with anything I said today, or you want to hear more from a Canadian and international point of view, without the US media bias, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button below. That way you're notified of my future videos. And if you want to see more of my videos, stick around and watch the ones that will show up on your screen shortly. Thanks everyone, I'll catch you in the next one.